Hosting for the Dice Tower is generously provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff, in stock at coolstuffinc.com. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 462.
Medieval Times.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's supersized show, we go cycling, revisit a prisoner's dilemma, play Sentinels solo, and try to fix Risk. Also, a tale of betrayal, advice on how to deal with gamers who take attacks personally, and our top 10 medieval games. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Matt Eisman to my Akbar Bajabiamila, Tom Vassell.
And I show my ignorance once again.
I'm a little obsessed with American Ninja Warrior right now. Those are the two co-hosts. We went to a viewing party last night with, got to see Drew Dreschel, power through the Atlanta course. It was really, really cool.
So you went and watched one live?
I didn't get to see a taping, but we watched the episode air live with one of the contestants in the room. Two of the contestants in the room.
That sounds not as interesting. I mean, it's cool to see that. I guess it's just that I would have really liked to see one of those live. Yes,
that would be cool as well, but they're never anywhere near me. They've been to Miami a couple times.
Yes. And I guess I should clarify this because a lot of people, I tell people I live in Miami. I live in Homestead, which is a good chunk south of Miami. It's like an outskirt of Miami. So to go into Miami is not something that I strive to do. I will if I have to, but hey, do you know what we're not doing this episode?
We're not at a convention?
Well, there's that. But we're not doing our Origins preview episode. We used to do those all the time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Mostly because Origins was the only convention we went to.
We'd we'd preview everything we did. I think it's probably best that we don't at this point, because then that would be all we do this summer.
Origins preview, Origins post-view. Also, mixed with Dice Tower preview, Dice Tower However, we do know that many of you are going to Origins, so some quick blurbs about that. We will have a booth there. It is in Hall D. We are in between Yellow, Mayfair, Eagle Griffin, and WizKids. So
That's exactly where we were last time.
We were not next to Eagle Griffin last time, I don't believe.
Yeah, they were on the other side of us.
Sure, they were. Okay, so yes, that is exactly where. Yes, it's the same place we were last year anyhow.
Yep.
But they made that hall much bigger, so we're not in the middle of it anymore. We're on more closer to a side of it because they combined halls D and E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Fantasy Flight is showing back up, and they are big, in case you've missed that lately. So, so come by and see us. We will have promos for those who want to donate to the show. We will have Dead of Winter promos. We will have poker chips. We will have dice. We'll have Sheriff of Nottingham promos, a few other promos, maybe some dice towers and mats and things like that. And Champions of Midgard's promos. So, and we'll also be taping there, so you can come by and watch us. We'll be streaming live. You might even get on the live stream. Who knows? If you come by.
Possibly.
Eric, me, Sam, Z, and Chaz will be there. And then a few other folks working with us. We'll be doing a live show at 9 o'clock Saturday night.
Yes.
And this you need to know because it's not on the schedule. If you come by our booth, we will gladly tell you where the show is.
Have we made a sign? We should make a sign.
I'll
we should
add
make
it to my
two signs.
A sign.
Okay.
It's really odd. I was thinking I need to make a sign as Eric said that. It was like my voice, my head started speaking in Eric's voice.
I'm your Jiminy Cricket. Wait, hang on. Let me write that down. The Jiminy Cricket to my Pinocchio. Yes, okay, good. I'll save that for later.
Do you know what happened to Jiminy Cricket in the book? Not Disney movie,
I don't want to know what happened to Jiminy Cricket in the book.
I'm just saying, you should read that before you say what you are. So anyhow, we'll be there. Come by, say hi to us, blah, blah, blah. The things I always say in that regard. And that's pretty much the Origins preview. We're not doing a Dice Tower get-together dinner this year because we just have too many people. So if you happen to catch us and we're crossing a street and you say, we're going to buy you dinner, maybe that would work.
Or you can buy a sandwich, bring it to the booth, and just eat it in front of us. And it'll be like you're torturing us with food, but you'll be eating with us.
I miss that sandwich place. Ah. Those were the days, my friend. All right, so anyhow, lots of different things are happening there. The cruise is almost sold out, so if you're coming on Dice Tower Cruise, you want to go to dicetowercruise.com and check that out. Dice Tower Con is only a few weeks away. There's a lot going on. So without further ado, let's talk about some games that we've played. And I'm going to start out with a very hot game. I was just at the UK Gaming Expo, and this was the hottest game there, but it's a locally designed one by Tony Boydell, who's probably best known for Snowdonia.
Okay.
Guilds of London is a game that he's been working on for, I think, like 10 years. It's his magnum opus type game. And in Guilds of London, there's a bunch of tiles on the table and more added as different turns go by, and they are guilds. And on your turn, you're going to play cards from your hand. There's a whole deck of action cards. This game revolves around this deck of action cards. And action cards can add more of your liverymen to the middle Guilds of London, or you can, there's different suits on these cards, and you can send them out to the different guilds. You want to have it the most in each guild when that guild pops, basically when there's enough guys. There's like a number on each one. So when there's a total of 4 livery men, for example, in a guild, that guild will score, and whoever has the most gets a bonus, and whoever has second most gets a bonus. But the bonuses are all different on these guilds, and each action card can also be used to do something special. Sometimes it costs discarding other cards from your hand to do that. So there's really like a kabillion different things you can do. There's all sorts of interaction. It's pretty mean. It's one of the meanest Euro games I've played in a while. I mean, you can really mess with other people. And it's area control and going around, and I really like it. There's some good, solid mechanisms here. There's a few negatives. The game's symbology rivals that of Race for the Galaxy.
Oof.
There is a lot going on. At the beginning, the game does not necessarily it's not intuitive, I think, on what to do, especially with just how some of the stuff works. And so I think your first game, you'll just be like, what's going on? And there's a reference sheet, and there's like 90 different cards or something. So, once you know what the symbols mean, I don't even have to look up the reference sheet anymore. But that took me pretty much a whole game to get those down. And I feel like I'm better at that than many people are because I play so many games. But it was kind of a tough egg to crack. But once you get past that, very, very fulfilling, satisfying game. I really enjoyed it. I just think it's going to fall into that category where I say, hey, Eric, you want to play Guilds of London? And you're like, oh, yeah, but I haven't played it before. Is that okay? And I would say, oh, you know what, Eric, do you want to play Ticket to Ride?
Yeah.
Because that's how I am with Race for the Galaxy now. Someone will be like, hey, oh, you want to play Race for the Galaxy? I'm like, oh, you've played before? No.
Let's do this instead. Yeah.
And I think that's where Guilds of London, after a few more plays, I think that's where it will end up for me. Still, a very good game. Highly recommend it.
Okay. I really enjoyed my first game today, and that was Council of Four. This is a set collection and route building game where you've got a map that's split into three thirds, and there's 5 cities in each section, and the map is actually variable. You can flip different panels around, and it changes the way the routes are connected and even the colors of some of the cities. And you are trying to claim little guild houses in each of these cities, or as many of them as possible. And each of these cities is going to have some sort of bonus associated with it that may earn you extra points or earn you resources, etc. And every time you place in these cities, you're going to trigger not only that city's ability, but you will also trigger every other city you are connected to. So creating a network is certainly the way to be as most efficient as possible in this game. The other way you get to be as efficient as possible is in the way you claim these actions, because there's going to be little cards out that say you can build in one of these 3 cities or in one of these 2 cities, and those have bonuses as well, bonus actions. But in order to claim these cards, you have to sort of appease these 4 meeples. There's a little tray with 4 meeples in each of these action zones, and they're different colors. They're sort of shuffled at the beginning of the game and put out there. And if you have all 4 of the colors that are in that tray, well, you get to do that action for free. But if you only have 3 of the 4, well, then it's going to cost you a little bit of money. If you only have 2, it's going to cost you a little bit more money. There's also some wild cards that while it will let you trigger the action, it still costs you $1 to use it. And so the more you wait collecting cards, the cheaper you can do these actions, but your opponents may be doing things more quickly. There's a bonus track, as in sort of like Russian railroad style, where you, or Orleans style, that if you move along that track, you get extra bonuses, and the farther you move, the more bonuses you get. Lots of actions to trigger and ways to score points and resources and all this stuff. Really neat game with options. Do you wait? Do you pay to take an action now? Do you wait to collect more resources or more cards to match things better? You can also place a meeple from the side of the board into one of these tracks, knocking off one of the 4. They sort of shuffle off and fall off a ledge, and now you've got a different set of 4 that may match your cards better, so you can trigger something better. There's also a pawn that, like a king pawn, that can be moved around the board. It's another set of 4, another council of 4 that can trigger that guy, and that guy can move around the board and allow you to place in cities without needing the card. He's even more efficient, but he's more expensive to move around the board. I really liked this. Oh, there's bonuses for building in certain cities or being the first to put a house in one entire third of the board. You can play for those, and they will earn you points, but it sort of precludes you from going for those connections and building a network. It forces you to spread out if you want to go for those bonuses, and that's a tricky decision, because that's exactly what I did. I went for some of those early bonuses and then found that I was crippled in my route or my network building, and other players who had built a much more strong network and branched out earned their stuff more quickly and efficiently and was able to trigger multiple cities with each placement they did. Neat game. I really want to play it again. That is Council of 4.
Yeah, those bonuses, you sit there and you're like, oh, wow, that's not fair. That guy got a whole pile of points and he just built a couple things. He's going to win the game. I always compare it to the same feeling I get in Lords of Waterdeep, where the first time a guy scores a 40-point quest or something, you're like, what? I can never win now. It's the same way here. And the way that these bonuses just stack and stack, I just love that about this game. It's like, oh, I'm going to trigger that city again, which triggers this one and this one and this one. Right. That's super fun.
But then those bonuses, those early bonuses can be worth like 25, 35 points right off the bat. It's like, well, how can I ignore that? But it's fool's gold over there. Don't go for it. Don't be fooled.
Well, I mean, if no one goes for it, then someone's going to get it, So,
right.
If you can get it and do some connections, then that's what you want to do.
Yes, that's what I'll try and do next time.
Yeah, I really like this game. It doesn't look very impressive, but I have pretty good feeling it's going to be reprinted.
Okay.
I'm just saying. All right, the next game I'm going to talk about is called IceCool. This is a game that was all the rage at the UK Gaming Expo. It's from Brain Games. If you remember, Eric, we played, I think, Giraffeometer.
Yep.
And a whole bunch of little games from them. They tend to do unique type games. And this one I really liked because this one it's called a stacking box. You open up the box and inside's another box, and inside that box is another box, and inside that box is another box. And you take all these boxes and you put them together and you have this giant board, and you are going to be flicking penguins around on this board.
Okay.
But these penguins have weighted bases in them, little metal pieces that I might have accidentally found out how it's in there because of some reason or other.
Oh.
So when you flick them, if you flick them properly, you can curve them. So there's like all these rooms connected by doors, and you're trying to it plays up to 4 players, and so up to 3 players are students who are like trying to play hooky, and they're just trying to go through different doors. You go through different doors, you get to draw cards and get points on the cards you draw. The fourth player is a monitor, and they're trying to just hit the other player penguins, catch them out of their seats through the hall monitor. No one likes them. And so, if you can do well, you could, curve through one door, curve around the corner. If you hit the penguin just right, you can even hit these penguins so they jump over the walls. You can also hit the penguins so that you're just a horrible flicker, and it will show to everyone there, which is how most hits are. But occasionally you do those amazing hits. And I like that. It reminds me of the ball from the Roadsters game.
Yeah, I was going to ask. It sounds like the Z-ball concept.
Yeah, I don't think it's exactly like the Z-ball, but it's a similar feel, right? So the way you flick it, you can do cool curves and stuff. And it's a blast. The game itself is okay. I mean, when you draw cards, and I get 2 3-point cards, and Eric gets 2 1-point cards, ha, ha, ha. And although the game does, if you have 2 1-point cards, you can flip them over at any point in time and take an extra turn. You don't lose them, so there's that. But it's still all about the flicking. The point scoring almost doesn't matter at the end of the game. You're just having a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one. That's IceCool.
Last for me is a trivia game. Have you ever wanted to do a solo trivia game, Tom? You can with Box of Rocks. This is it's a sort of like it's a small box, not a giant box, a small box of cards.
This is not the first game called this, by the way.
It is not. No, we've seen other ones, and this is probably more creative than the other ones we've seen.
The other ones were literally a box of rocks that you stacked.
You stacked up. This one comes with some fake rocks. They're some sort of resin. And some of the rocks are marked. They have a little mark on one side. They're flat rocks. They have a mark on one side and not a mark on the other. And so you pull a question card, like most trivia games, and all of the answers are going to be either 0, 1, or 2. So, for example, the number of people that have been inducted into both the Football and Baseball Hall of Fames. And so if I was playing, I would say, well, I'm going to guess 1 on that. I think it's just one person. And so then you put those rocks in the box, and you shake them up. And the inanimate objects, you look inside the box, and the inanimate objects also have answered 1. And so now we look at the answer, and the answer is 1. The only person to be elected to both the Football Hall of Fame and the Baseball Hall of Fame is Cal Hubbard. And so both the rocks and me score 1 point.
All right, I'm playing. Go ahead. Ask another question.
You want to ask another one? Okay. All right. The number of magicians who founded the Houdini Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
I'm going to say 0.
You say 0 people founded the museum.
You said the number of magicians, right?
Ah, yes, that might be a trick question. I'm going to say it's 2.
All right.
And so the rocks have answered 2. And the answer is 2. So Tom would not score a point. The rocks would. And you continue like this until somebody scores 3 points. And then the game is over, and you either say, I defeated the inanimate box of rocks, or I am, in fact, dumber than the box of rocks. And that's the game. The box says that it's for 2 to 38 players, which I think is totally wrong, because it's for one player at a time, because you're fighting against the box of rocks. Fine, it's a gimmick. And the gimmick works. It's cute. However, I don't know how long I would want to play this game.
See,
I think this would get old really fast.
I kept this game. I don't keep many games.
Yeah.
But I kept this game because it's one of those games I can pull out, and it works. It just works.
Sure.
You say, hey, come here, I want to play against the box rocks. And I saw some people go things like, well, the box technically is going to guess 1 most of the time, so blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? And
yes, and if most of the answers are 1, then that would allow them to win more often.
But the box wins a lot, folks.
It's really, can you guess a multiple choice trivia game? Can you beat an inanimate or a randomizer? It's like rolling
Eric's
dice.
Right. It's definitely a gimmick, but it's a really funny gimmick. You could even use it as a start player gimmick for all I care. It's just it's an interesting idea, and I think it's cute and entertaining, and it's not that expensive. And yeah, I'm going to bring mine out every once in a while to show someone that they just might not be as smart as a box of rocks.
It is cute, and it's also lightning fast. It's, a maximum of 5 questions? So, yes, I'm fine with dumb games if they don't overstay their welcome. It's enjoyable. Box of rocks.
All right, let's have some gumbo.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with more Louisiana flavor. There's a word we use in Louisiana that's very apropos to gaming. Lagniappe. It means a little something extra. What a great word for our board game hobby, especially when a designer gives a little something extra for one of our favorite games. Today, I've got a little lagniappe for you, one of the best expansions of 2015. Takenoko Chibis, a small expansion for Takenoko. The base game came out in 2011 and was designed by Antoine Bauza, one of my favorite designers. As a side note, I'm still not sure how Takenoko was not recognized with the 2011 or 2012 Spiel des Jahres, or at least a nomination. Sure, Quirkle sold 1 million copies, and Kingdom Builder by Donald X. Vaccarino is more fun than some give it credit for. But of those 3 games, which one of the 3 is going to have a more lasting impression on the hobby? Not on the mass market, I mean. Yep, Takenoko is still played, still beloved, and has a beautiful extra-large edition. But back to our lagniappe. Chibis is a small box expansion designed by Antoine and Corentin Lebrat. They previously collaborated on Open Sesame. The base game is essentially a cute tile-laying game similar to Carcassonne that adds a few thematic elements. The players score points as they build out the gardens, or if the royal gardener grows certain types of bamboo, or even if they can entice the giant panda to eat just the right color of bamboo. This new expansion essentially adds 3 elements. First, new specialty tiles, including some beautiful new water tiles. Second, new objective cards to score points. And finally, a giant female panda with their little baby pandas that produce effects to help the players irrigate the plots or improve the tiles. And of course, those little baby chibi pandas also give bonus victory points at the end. The word lagniappe implies that the something extra is something good, or else it wouldn't really be lagniappe. That's what I like best about this expansion. It adds more of what we like in the game: unique tiles, cool new objectives, and more pandas, without adding to the length of the game. You should still be able to set up and complete a game in about an hour. There are a couple of little downsides. While the game box is perfectly sized and has a great insert, there are some printing issues on the backs of the tiles that make the new ones stand out. But Takenoko, the base game, never really relied on blind draws, since you could pull 3 tiles at a time and choose the one you wanted to use anyway. Another downside is the little panda chibis are just small round cardboard tokens. Sure, Bowser probably needed this way to make it easier for gameplay, since the chibis have little icons on them showing what to do with them. But it is a little disappointing that the only panda miniature in the box is the mother panda, when it would have been so much cooler to have her, as well as her little chibi babies. But as you can tell, I'm just nitpicking here. This is a well-thought-out, well-designed expansion that hits all the marks for me. It provides a little more complexity, a little more strategy, and definitely some new elements to make it a fresh game again, and all without increasing the length. My wife and I don't play Takenoko anymore without the Chibis expansion. I give it 3 out of 5 cayenne peppers. I'm glad the folks at Bombix and Matago got together with Antoine Bauza to bring to the Takenoko world a little lagniappe for the game. If you own Takenoko, get to your friendly local game store and get you some lagniappe too. Until next time, laissez le bon temps rouler.
I learned the word lagniappe because somebody on the Kickstarter gave extra money above the pledge that they wanted, and they said, "Here's an extra lagniappe for you." And we were like, what does that even mean? So we had to look it up.
Lagniappe?
And now Z says it all the time.
Okay. Here is your lagniappe.
Is that how you pronounce it?
It is. That he says it several times in the segment. Were you not? Were you off getting it?
Well, hey, now listen. I looked it up to see how to say it. Maybe he's saying it wrong.
Okay, sure.
I'm probably saying it wrong.
Maybe it's an alternate pronunciation.
There's always a 100% chance that I'm the one pronouncing things wrong. Are you kidding? I would never go up against anybody. All right, folks, real quickly, I was just at the UK Gaming Expo with Sam Healy, which was the first time I've ever been in England, let alone to the UK Gaming Expo. And there's not a lot more that I want to say past what, our whole last episode was about that. But I just did want to say...
Sorry I announced that they were in London when they were really in Birmingham. Sorry. I got mixed up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, well. Shameful.
I wasn't there.
But it was a great convention. The final count has it at 12,000 people.
Nice.
That is not a small number. Origins last year was 12,000
that's Origins
people.
level. Yeah.
And so it's hard to tell that many people there. I mean, the exhibit hall is really the same size as Origins. And then they're like fill up a hotel, and there's rooms all throughout this hotel. The hotel's about the same size as maybe the DoubleTree, where we stayed for the Dice Tower convention. So there's a lot of room in there too. And it just was a big thanks again to everyone. I already mentioned the two hottest games, I think, that were new there were the ones I mentioned, Guilds of London and IceCool, for two completely different reasons. Mm-hmm. At the end of the show, they gave out the UK Gaming Awards. So many games won. I honestly don't remember all of them, even though I handed out several of them. I did not write them down. I do know that the best abstract game was Onitama.
Ah.
So, thanks.
Nice.
I'm glad people like that. I played a rapping game.
Okay.
And I got, there's a lot of miniatures there. I think England is more Ameritrash than America is.
Interesting.
But there was a lot of fighting style games. I mean, there's a lot of Euro games and stuff there too. But it was really fun. Eric, you should go some year.
Some year. I'll definitely do it.
Yes, and one of the reasons people will say, well, where's Eric in many of the conventions? And the fact is, Eric has a very successful job that would not be very successful if he went 8-9 weeks a year to conventions. I believe he's already taking 5 weeks.
Something like that, yes.
So, wait, let me count. You're doing Gamma and Origins and Gen Con and Dice Tower Con and BGG Con. And, that's way more than 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And the cruise.
Yep. Got to plan those in advance. And
so, yes, he actually does have to do books at some point.
Yeah. You went to a big event. I wanted to mention that I went to a small event. My son's class sent out invitations to all the dads for Father's Day a little early because they'll be out of school by the time Father's Day comes around. And they said, come to school and bring your favorite board game to play with your child.
Oh, I saw you tweet about that. Did you take Merchant of Venus?
I didn't have enough time to play Merchant of Venus because it was only an hour. And I'm really glad I didn't try and bring anything larger than King of Tokyo, which is what I actually brought, just because table space was so, limited. It's not like this was a huge hall. It was my kid's classroom. And so there wasn't a whole lot of space. But I was really interested to see what other dads were going to bring because, this is like, we're so immersed in our hobby world to go into to see what other, the general public is going to bring to an event like this. And it was Star Wars Monopoly, Trouble, Jenga, Connect 4. It was all the mass market stuff. I think the closest thing I saw to a hobby game was a party game, 5-second rule. One dad had under his arm. And there was a dexterity game that was a full table, almost like a crokinole, but it was one of the cheaper table sort of versions of that. That was about it. It was Trouble and Sorry and all this other stuff, and my copy of King of Tokyo that got some attention. And then my kid beat me twice. So an enjoyable time was had by all. Not quite 12,000 people, but it was a good time.
Well, let's get lower than that and go down to one person.
Hello, and welcome to the Solo Game Corner. And look who's here. It's Derek Davis.
Yo, board gamers, this is Derek Davis from the What Did You Play This Week podcast, and welcome back to the Solo Game Corner. Now, Imperial Settlers is a great card-driven engine-building game with faction-specific decks that give players unique abilities and opportunities to create synergy and score points. It can be frustrating as you are learning to capitalize on the strengths of your faction and the weaknesses of your opponents. It can also be very rewarding when these things become apparent and you are able to employ them. A game that really captures this same nuance for me that I will only play solo in my current life and gaming situation is Sentinels of the Multiverse. Sentinels is a thoroughly thematic experience that allows me to choose several superhero spin-off characters to face one or many, if you have some of the expansions, villains. The goal of the game is to destroy the villain while managing the damage and effects of the villain in the environment cards that are out on the table. My favorite thing about Sentinels, other than the endless variety, is the synergy of each of the character decks. Much like Imperial Settlers, every character has a very unique deck of cards that encourages you to play a particular strategy in order to capitalize on characters' strengths. However, they also have weaknesses, and if you choose the wrong hero to go up against the wrong villain, you will be toast. This forces you to explore multiple characters in order to figure out how to best encounter each of the villains. Another excellent aspect of this game is the engine building. For some strange reason, BGG does not list engine building as a mechanism in Sentinels when it actually is, in my opinion, a core part of the game. Again, much like Imperial Settlers, you place certain cards in front of each character that boost stats and combo with other cards to maximize damage, defense, actions, etc. Learning the dominant engine of each character is essential to success. And yes, I usually play 3 or 4 characters at a time. But anyway, why is Sentinels a solo-only game for me? 2 primary reasons. First, I mostly play games with non-gamers, most of whom are not familiar with this particular game at all. And each time I have tried to play with others, the game slows to a crawl because each player has to read every single card and then agonize over each play. This often ends in looking at me in confusion, not knowing what to play. I tell them what I think would be best and end up feeling like an alpha player and in essence end up playing the game by myself. The second reason is player elimination. When a player gets eliminated and has to watch the rest of the game, it can be increasingly annoying. The truth is that sometimes one player needs to absorb a bulk of the damage so that the combat and damage characters can destroy the villain. When I'm playing solo, I don't have to worry about a person playing my blocking character. I can just let them serve their purpose in order to win the game. So if you find yourself hankering for a deeply thematic superhero game that gives you the opportunity to synergize, build engines, and explore an endlessly expansive world, then I highly recommend that you try Sentinels of the Multiverse. How about you? What's your favorite aspect of Sentinels? Do you play it primarily solo or multiplayer? Let me know. You can find me on Twitter at SoloStoryGamer and on the What Did You Play This Week podcast in my Evolving Review segment. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Skip Hampton with yet another Tale of Betrayal. My Tale of Betrayal begins on a beautifully sunny Friday in Birmingham. Birds were singing. Brummies, people from Birmingham, were extolling the virtues of the Birmingham Canal System. More canals than Venice, don't you know? And UK gamers were making their annual pilgrimage to the NEC for the UK Board Gaming Expo. As we waited to enter the main hall on this, the first day, the place was abuzz with chatter, everyone barely able to contain their excitement for all the new games behind their practiced British Reserve. But the thing I was looking forward to most was the prospect of meeting my podcasting and YouTubing heroes. Questions burned in my mind, like, would actual LOL be wearing a wig? How big is Quinn's next to a standard reference pair? And most importantly of all, did Tom and Sam enjoy their fish and chips? National pride was at stake. I am not usually one that is interested in fame or the famous, and I do not seek out to meet or obtain autographs of film or TV stars. I've even passed on meeting and shaking the hand of the British Prime Minister David Cameron. But something about the prospect of meeting one or more of these gaming rock stars put a smile on my face that no potential throat punch could dislodge. Sam and Tom were at the door and greeted many of us as we entered, answering the same questions over and over again with a smile, having their pictures taken with fans and even signing my copy of Nothing Personal. What gentlemen! I met Actua LOL, who disappointingly wasn't wearing a wig, shook hands with most of Shut Up and Sit Down, who are generally much taller than a reference pair, and chatted merrily with the prolific Eric Lang. Later, I bumped into Tom again and bought him a strawberry cheesecake ice cream to say thank you for his help in introducing me into this wonderful hobby. The saying, never meet your heroes, didn't seem to apply to gaming. Little did I know that one of my heroes would later betray me. The rest of the expo was terrific fun. I got to try demos, investigate and buy many games, and of course talk with indie designers, merchants, and even Daleks. But despite all of this, there was a small hole in my perfect day. Having traveled to the expo on my own, I found it tricky to find someone to sit down and play a complete game with. It was while I was listening to a lecture by Christian Peterson of Fantasy Flight that I noticed one of my heroes at the back of the auditorium sat alone, listening rapturously, and not at all distracted. I thought, this is my chance. I may never get another opportunity to play a game with this icon, and win or lose, it'll be a story I can tell and retell my kids and future grandkids, if my kids would still let me see them after the constant hearing about it. I looked through my phone for a game I thought this gaming giant would enjoy, and optimistically entered my name and his into Can't Stop in preparation. Now, knowing this is a tale of betrayal and that the game in question is Can't Stop, some of you may be wondering how I could possibly be betrayed. Well, keep listening, listeners, and all will become clear. I sidled over and sat down next to this champion of ludology and politely asked if he was interested in playing. He nodded and said, "You know I never win this, right?" "There's always a first time," I replied. And suddenly, win or lose, it was win-win for me. If I won, I won. If I lost, my gaming idol might remember this game. And perhaps me. Forever. I started first. There's no point in being cautious on the first turn in Can't Stop, and I quickly bust and passed my phone over, where the game started playing itself. "Hang on a sec. I think I've left you as a CPU player." I took the phone back, quit the current game, corrected the problem, and restarted, and quickly bust again. My opponent's roll was 4 6s, double 12. He kept rolling and quickly claimed a column in his first turn, and kept rolling. Eventually, after 5 or 6 rolls, he decided not to push his luck any further, stopped, and it was my turn again. There was clearly no point in being cautious against this player, and I went for it. 7 rolls, 8 rolls, 9 rolls, and finally a streak of 10 rolls before I felt I could push my luck no further and stopped. It was my opponent's turn again, and he rolled like a madman, tearing across the board and overtaking me in a couple of columns. With every press of the button, I couldn't believe he kept going. This man had grit, an unflinching will, determination, a set of brass cojones the size of cannonballs, but eventually he hesitated and stopped matching my streak of 10. I had a lot of catching up to do. We rolled. My opponent kept throwing like he wanted to finish the game in a single turn, and it was nail-biting for me to watch, as he rolled streak after streak, but followed it with bust after bust. I wasn't cautious, but never quite managed to match the audacity of my opponent. Luck was with me, however, and I took the lead. It was exhilarating. We were both close now. I had 2 columns, and he the single one he'd claimed on the first turn, but he was close enough to win and not to require a ridiculous amount of luck. It was my turn, and I rolled and rolled and rolled, and on my last throw I claimed 2 more columns, crushing him 4 columns to 1. "I've won," I announced quietly. My opponent smiled and asked if he could take a photo of my screen. Channeling his inner Bill Murray, he calmly said, "No one will ever believe you." The board on my phone was spinning around, and thanks to a bug in the game triggered when I restarted it, were written the words, "Tom wins the game." Okay. Bye.
I haven't heard any treachery in this story or betrayal.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think this is your fault. This is betrayal of his app.
No, I don't know what anyone's talking about. I'm looking here at my phone right now, and I see a picture where it says Tom wins the game. You win. I don't believe that. As far as I remember, I won convincingly, and I have
that's the
pictorial
only
proof of it.
As far as the proof goes, the evidence says Tom wins the game.
It does say that. I have this. I'm sticking to
gotta
my
support
story
you.
of lies. I will say this, though. First of all, I apparently get very bored in other people's sessions. But I have to say, there's something missing from Can't Stop when you play it as an app. I don't think I'm going to download it from my phone or anything, because rolling the dice, you want to roll the dice.
Yeah, that's true.
And just pressing a button, what happens is you press the button. Now, I do like when you press the button, it's like you can pick 6, 7, 8, or whatever, you know. I'm like, oh, okay,
right,
that's
it
great.
gives you all of your options really quickly.
So that's nice. And I like that, but I just like when you press it and it busts, it's just like, bust. There's not that moment where you roll the dice and you're adding them and you're going, no, wait, no.
Right, you don't have the panic. Yeah.
And I miss that.
As you frantically look for it. Yeah.
But that did wake me up from me about to fall asleep, so I appreciate that. Huzzah! Let's continue on.
And now it's time for bonus action. Musings, stories, gripes, and theories with Mike Rudman.
Whenever I meet a gamer, one of the first things I'll ask about as I'm getting to know them is the story of how they got into the hobby in the first place. Their gaming origin story. Most of these stories are fairly similar, but I enjoy hearing about the first other-than-mainstream game that someone played, who introduced them to gaming, and how their tastes have evolved since they first heard the word meeple. My gaming origin story began the way I imagine many of your stories began, with Dungeons & Dragons. My D&D years didn't last very long. We started playing the old Redbox edition of D&D in about 6th grade. This would have been about 1986 in case you're keeping track at home. I was the dungeon master, and I loved every second of it. I was especially drawn in by the thrill of presenting the players with a new dungeon to explore, and surprising them with every newly opened door or chest. Well, by 9th grade, my friends and I had made the conscious decision that if we were going to be cool high school guys and have any chance at all with girls, there was certainly no place in our lives for something as nerdy as Dungeons & Dragons. So we packed up the D20s, and that was that. Well, this was a terrible decision for me, because I really did like the game, and unfortunately, abstaining from D&D didn't make it any easier for me to get a date. But that's a story maybe for a different podcast. Fast forward about 20 years or so, I was married, and our first child was on the way. Other than the occasional video game, there was no gaming going on in my life at all. But there was a part of me tucked away that still remembered those adventure modules and graph paper maps, and once in a while I wondered if I would ever play Dungeons & Dragons again. But it just didn't happen. One summer, some friends from New York were visiting. I had met Peter only a few years before. He was the husband of an old friend of mine, but I knew that he played quite a bit of D&D. So inevitably, our conversation drifted to gaming, and I waxed nostalgic about my old DMing days. And Peter said, well, why don't you find a group and start playing again? I thought about it, but no, life was just too busy. We had a kid on the way, and we had so much going on. I just couldn't commit to a regular group and a regular campaign. Playing Dungeons & Dragons, playing it well, can be a lot of work. When I was a kid, I had time to put in the work, but not now. Well, Peter then proceeded to pretty much change my life. He thought about it for a second and said, you know, there are some new board games that kind of scratch the same itch as D&D, but take much less time and effort. You just set it up, play the game, have a blast, and put the game away. No commitment, no work. And he just so happened to have a copy of Betrayal at House on the Hill in the trunk of his car. So we played that night, and he was right. That sense of adventure, of not knowing what was around the next corner, the surprise and the wonder, it was all there, and it only took an hour. It didn't require a regular game group of busy guys who needed the stars to align in order to get together with any regularity. You just needed a few willing participants, and you were off, exploring the house on the hill. Now, I know there are problems with Betrayal, but at its core, it really is an excellent, compact RPG in a box. Not every playthrough works, and some of the scenarios are clunky, but when it works, it really shines. And the rest, as they say, is history. The epilogue to my origin story is that in 2014, when the 5th edition of the Dungeons & Dragons system was published, my interest in the game was rekindled after all these years. I thought, well, maybe if I found the right people and approached it the right way, in other words, not too obsessively, maybe I could give D&D another try. This was supposed to be a vastly streamlined system that had took all the best features from previous editions, eliminated the fiddly combat precision of the much-debated 4th edition, and made the game more enjoyable than ever before. So I bought all the books, and we gave it a shot. Next time on Bonus Action, I'll talk about how that worked out.
Welcome to Cult of the Old, where I discuss games we may have forgotten about, or games that failed miserably but still had some good mechanics in them.
He's Brian Counter, and everything he does is counterproductive.
Today, I wanted to talk about Reifenbreite, which translates literally to by the width of a tire. Created in 1979 by Rob Bontenball. Rated rank 6.9 and 867 on Board Game Geek. My apologies if I completely butchered the title there. This is a family-style racing game. Think Tour de France without Lance Armstrong and his PEDs. Now, while this is an older roll-and-move game... Surprise! There's a little card play and varying terrain, which actually makes the game still interesting. There's a little bit of history to the game. This game won the Spiel in 1992. There's been many versions of the game, and many of the copies of the original version were burned up in a warehouse fire, apparently, which made it advantageous for collectors. But there's still a few copies on Board Game Geek at reasonable prices even now. Here's an abbreviated version of the rules. Each player starts off with 4 cyclists, one of whom is the best. The players choose a course. Could be flat, could be up through mountains and down through the mountains, could be over cobblestones or whatever. And players decide how long they want that route to be. So players roll the dice, move their cyclists, but they also have cards. A player can take a card for a particular cyclist. There are restrictions like you can't play this card in the mountains on some of them, but they can substitute before a die roll to mitigate a little bit of luck. Also, there's a drafting mechanic, by which if one cyclist starts a turn behind another cyclist, and they're in the same type of terrain, they can draft. Meaning, if that player, whether it's yourself or someone else, rolls really well, you can draft and wind up right behind them for the entire turn. Obviously, if they roll bad, you don't want to do that. Or, if your path is cut off for drafting, you can't do that either. But clever usage of cards and drafting is key to the game, along with a little bit of luck and trying to block other players' paths as you go. Keep in mind, you're racing a team, so if you finish first and the rest of your riders come in at the tail end, it's not going to do you much good. For example, in the last game that we played, I didn't finish first or second, but I finished 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and pretty much crushed everybody, which was fun, because he's the heavy Euro guys that always beat me at everything. Lastly, and a part of the game I'm not particularly fond of, are random luck cards. Anytime a player rolls a 7, they flip it over. Last time I played, I got to move 4 spaces ahead with the rider, because that was his hometown, which is fine, but you can also have catastrophic crashes, and that's a little bit harsh. So fun, yes, but some of these are a little daunting, and I'm not a particular fan of some of these. Even with that said, this is a fun game, and I can recommend it. How does it stack up against other racing games? I think I'd put it a little bit behind Formula D. Formula D is a good game with dice and all that stuff, and there's just a lot of good stuff going on it. This one is pretty close, but if you like cycling, seriously, the theme and the way that players can choose the length of their course and what terrain they're going over, that's kind of fun. And there's more blockage of riders in this game than in Formula D, so I can recommend this if you can find a copy. It's a fun family-style game, and the fact that you have to get your team across in the best shape is kind of a fun variant over single-unit-style races.
Yay, I get to talk about a game that Brian talked about for once. Reifenbreite. I really do like this game. I don't know what it is that has made it like not show up in America ever. I don't believe there's a single English printing of it. And yet, when we go to Essen, I'm like, okay, I'll get the rights to this game. And then we see hundreds of copies at all the stands there.
They're everywhere. If you want a copy of Reifenbreite, you can get one for somewhere around 10 to 15 euro, I think.
I'm actually considering getting one just to replace mine because mine's all beat up. And that's how cheap the game is. I'm like, it's not that bad to replace it type situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when it did win the Spiel des Jahres, it was probably flooded. It flooded the market, and a lot of copies went out. There's a lot of used copies around.
I see. All right, well, let's get to the top 10.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Now, this is an interesting top 10 because it's based on a time frame in history.
Yes.
And it's a time frame in history that I occasionally will make the somewhat caustic remark against. I'm not a huge fan in real life of the medieval era. I think it was a terrible time to live.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty horrible that there was 1,000 years of history, and at the end of those 1,000 years, it was pretty much the same as the beginning.
Yeah.
There was very little human technological advancement. There was very little mental advancement. There was pretty much nothing. Then the Renaissance and came along, and the Reformation and all these different things and then suddenly we see more progression in history, and then up to like an exponential rate. However, we do love medieval because it's a time that is almost romanticized for us in a bit, with castles and knights and chivalry and all that stuff. And apparently every board game designer loves this time frame because other than the Renaissance might be the most used period of time for board game designers. But I think medieval games might be the second most used. Now, I have not yet looked at Eric's list. Because I wanted to give my caveats for my list without mocking his if he has done it or not.
Excellent.
So what I did when I made my list, and I'm not saying other people had to do this or not. When I made my list, I picked games that I thought had at least a bit of the medieval flavor in them. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of games with that medieval thing slapped on. I also stayed away from anything that brought fantasy into the mix or mythology. So, for example, I did nothing from King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. There's a lot of games about them.
Yeah.
And I didn't do any of those because they're not actually real that we know of for sure. And if they were, we're not even sure what time frame it was from, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
I'm just saying those are the rules that I follow. That's all.
Okay.
So without further ado, let's get to number 10.
Number 10.
Number 10 is the Castles of Burgundy. Die Burgund von Burgund, Stefan Feld, terrific game about sort of mapping out your territory, putting up castles and farms. And I think the farms really do it for me, trying to get clusters of animals and raise them in different groups. Mechanically, it is a little pasted on, but it's such a great game I couldn't overlook it. It's my number 10, The Castles of Burgundy.
It's an excellent game, and this one just didn't make my list because I don't know what it doesn't feel medieval at all. But no big deal. Number 10 for me is Britannia. Now, technically, Britannia starts outside the medieval era, but then moves into it for most of its time frame. Britannia is a game in which it plays best with 4 players exactly. And each player controls different groups of people in Britain, starting at, I think it's AD 300, but it goes all the way up to 1100 or so. So it's mostly medieval time frame. And it starts with the Romans and ends with the Normans invading. And so each person controls factions, but you control multiple factions. So I don't remember what the exact split up is, but one person might control the Romans, someone else controls the Picts, someone else controls the Saxons, so you control different people. So if I control the Romans, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty strong. But later on in the game, when the Romans have died down, I might be controlling a small Scottish group. So you control, I think, 4 different factions over the course of the game, and you're trying to score as many points with them as you can. It's very historical. I really like that history seeps through, and so that is Britannia.
Number 9.
My number 9, I did not have that restriction, Tom. This is Shadows over Camelot, the King Arthur legend. I think because of just the romantic idea that fits within the time period, even if it isn't historically accurate. I like the idea of the knights going off and trying to solve problems all around the kingdom. And yeah, there's a little bit of magic and, mythical beasts that come into play here too. But I just like the concept and the knights going around doing stuff. Shadows over Camelot, my number 9.
My number 9 shows up higher on Eric's list. I will shuffle and wait for them.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Alhambra, which may not immediately jump to mind when you think of the medieval period, but it's definitely right in the middle of this time frame. And in Alhambra, you're building not necessarily a castle, but sort of a civilization, and collecting resources in order to do that with the 4 currencies. It's a game I haven't played in a while. But is a lot of fun and deserved its Spiel des Jahres nomination and win, and it's a good time and surprisingly fits into this theme. Number 8, Alhambra.
My number 8 is Cathedral. I like the idea of building, cathedrals and building the things, and having been in one of these cathedrals, not a cathedral, but a cathedral recently. They're just amazing pieces of architecture, right? And so I like the idea of building one. I still think this is Richard Breese's, one of his best 2 games, the other being Reef Encounter. It's a game that's been out of print for a while. I'd love to see someone pick this one and bring it back in. It felt like almost an upgraded, more gamer version of Settlers of Catan.
Yes.
Also, it has octagon tiles, which no other game I know does. So that's cool right there. So that is Cathedral.
It's a neat game and sort of shortlisted, although it was sort of off my radar for this one, and it's a good choice. I like the farmers in this one.
Number 7.
Dominion is my number 7, and I know the theme isn't terribly strong, but I do like the idea of collecting all of these things into your kingdom. You've got, just the basic deck at the beginning, and you choose how you want to develop and how you want to bring stuff in and hopefully get those synergies together and make a cohesive whole that is your deck, your Dominion. It's too good a game for me to leave off, even if it is a little bit of a pasted-on theme. Dominion, my number 7.
Yeah, I didn't put Dominion on my list because I consider Dominion to be practically a themeless game.
True.
Although my number 7 is pretty close, Voyages of Marco Polo. And those took place during the Middle Ages, and he went around and discovered new things. He was kind of almost a precursor to the Renaissance, actually. Mm-hmm. But it was still medieval in that sense, and I just love this game. I'm really popping on it these days. I like collecting things and moving them around. I feel like his actual voyages and journeys come through as he does travel around. The rest of it is kind of a pile of mechanisms with placing dice and doing stuff, but I like that. It works together. This is my Castles of Burgundy on my list, The Voyages of Marco Polo.
Good game. It was my short list. It's somewhere in the early teens for me.
Number 6.
Number 6. I love how we have these chaotic lists that we have virtually no crossover until we totally match up on a game, and that's Caelus in the number 6 position.
I will never believe that Eric doesn't just change it after he sees my list.
It just happens to work out that way, and I always chuckle every time it does. In Caelus, you're building all of these buildings along the path. You're helping to build a church, and it's got the lovely artwork of all these different buildings in the time period. It really does have that feeling of building a civilization, a village almost, as you work your way through the game. Really a fun game, really terrific worker placement game as well. Caelus.
You know, if Ryan was still listening to our show, he would probably have a tear in his eye right now.
He's somewhere sniffing right now.
Not because we added it to our list, but because it wasn't number 1. Caelus is a very fine game. It's a game I've given grief over the years to for various things. Mostly it's pretty ugly looking cover. And I think sometimes it's touted too highly by those who love it. But it is a pretty solid game, and it has that whole, hey, I'm building this shop to build these resources, and we're helping the king build a castle. Yay! You know, that does come through, not super strong, but it is a theme that's there, and the game is pretty solid. In fact, I've been thinking about Caelus lately. It's one of those games I'm thinking I need to play again. It's just been a really long time.
Number 5.
Speaking of building castles, my number 5 is Carcassonne. You think about constructing these walls and the cloisters and farming out in the fields. It's a simple game. It's not terribly thematic, but when you're done, you have this set of castles and rolling hills and rivers and stuff. Really brings out at least the landscape of the time period. And plus, it's a great game. Carcassonne, my number 5.
Now, before Eric gives me garbage for my number 5...
I considered it.
Well, no, because of my no mythological stuff. My number 5 is Sheriff of Nottingham. But the game has actually nothing to do with Robin Hood. Yes, you are kind of being a Robin Hood type figure, but it actually doesn't mention that. It's about the sheriff who actually has and actually does exist.
There is a Sheriff of Nottingham.
Right, who has actually played Sheriff of Nottingham. Huzzah! But anyhow.
Huzzah!
Sheriff of Nottingham is a game, it's part of the Dice Tower Essentials line where you are basically trying to smuggle goods past the sheriff who's going to be checking in to see if you have those apples that you said you did, or whether you're smuggling some crossbows through like you shouldn't. Very, very fun game. I don't need to say much more about that. We talk about this game often, but I think with good reason. Every time I play it, I have a blast. Sheriff of Nottingham.
Number 4.
El Grande is another fantastic game that fits the time period. I kind of like in El Grande how you can only influence areas where the king is. It sort of brings to life that concept of everyone following the king around. And when the king is in town, then stuff can happen. But if the king is nowhere near that zone of the board, it sort of these little areas just sort of become not important anymore. Terrific game, worker placement, or not worker placement, area control game, and a classic of the genre and fits the time period. El Grande, number 4.
Yeah, again, it's another one I didn't put in the list just because I know there's a theme there. I just don't really feel it at all when playing.
It's got this big tower that you throw the cubes into.
Right. Now, my number 4, I think the theme is pretty strong, and actually, which is a little unfortunate because of the theming of the game. It's called Radis.
Yeah.
And Radis is about the spread of, plague.
Yeah.
Using rats. And you're doing that and trying to make it so that your people survive and other people's don't. And if you think about this game too hard, it's pretty gruesome. But the game actually kind of pulls back to a very macro level, and you could play the game just thinking about cubes and moving people around and stuff. And it's not like this big gory game, but again, it's one of those ones you feel like, so what are we doing here? Oh yeah, But it is a lot of fun, especially when you add in the expansions. I think Africanus is one of the expansions. There's more roles that you pick from. The idea of choosing different roles to do different actions on the board is one I like. I also like the card game version of it, which is a different game. I think they both work really well. It's just one of those games that came right to my mind thinking about the medieval theme. Radis.
I always confuse Radis with Notre Dame, which also has the plague and the rats as at least a major part of it, although Radis is much more directly about the plague.
Number 3.
Number 3 was Tom's number 9, and that's Guildhall. All you need to do is look at the farmer with that creepy pig on the cover, and you know this is a game about the medieval period. It's a really neat game about collecting, set collection, and getting powers that do more and more as you collect more and more of that particular character. And eventually turning those into points and hopefully doing so more quickly than your opponents. Also stealing all their stuff. But the different guilds are very fitting for the theme. You've got thieves and you've got merchants and farmers and all these different personalities that are lovingly illustrated and really makes you think that you're right in the middle of the time period. Great game, too. Guildhall, my number 3, Tom's number 9.
Yeah, Guildhall is a lot of fun. They're actually coming out with some new versions of Guildhall this week at Origins.
Nice.
That are actually a fantasy-based version of it.
Yeah.
I still like the game, right? It doesn't matter whether it's fantasy or not. I do think the cover of the original Guildhall was a little unfortunate. I think people didn't want to play the game because of that. But I think it's just a neat, cool game. I like the different roles. I do like the artwork of the game once you get past the cover. It's pretty cool. My number 3 is another game that's based on a bit of a fantastical thing, Pillars of the Earth, which is based on the book Pillars of the Earth. But what actually happens in Pillars of the Earth, the building at the cathedral, actually happened. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's on my list, because the building of the cathedral actually happened, and I just love it. I feel it's very medieval as you're trying to hire the different glass workers and different stone workers and different people to build the windows and parts of the cathedral that you need. And I usually mention in these spots here that I have not yet read the book. However, a kind soul at the UK Gaming Expo said that they were tired of hearing me say that and gave me the book.
Nice.
So hopefully the next time I mention it, I will have read the book completely by that point.
On the next plane journey, you can do that.
I don't know. It's a pretty heavy book. I mean, physically heavy for carrying purposes.
Right.
So, but I read pretty fast, so I had to ship it to me because of the weight of it. But once I get it, I imagine I will have it done in a couple days. So that's Pillars of the Earth.
Number 2.
My number 2 is Lowenherz. This is a terrific game about area cordoning off. You are one of these lords, or I think princes, and the king is about to die. You're trying to become the strongest competitor to take the throne, and you do this by cordoning off sections of the board with these walls, and then sort of pushing out and pushing into your opponents. You've got knights that can protect your zones from that pushing of the walls. It just feels. It also brings out the intrigue of the period, because anytime a card comes up, you have to argue over whether you want money or whether you want that action, and if you can't come to terms, nobody's going to get anything. It's a neat game. Really, really cool game. Mean game. Neat game. Lowenherz, my number 2.
Yeah, I didn't even think about this one. Not Lowenhertz. I like the sequel to it, Domain, better. But yeah, that's a good choice. That might have made my list. I just missed that one. My number 2 is Wallenstein, which is about building castles and monasteries and attacking people. And yes, a cube tower, which Eric mentioned earlier in El Grande. But Wallenstein feels a little bit more thematic as you fight other cubes and beat up those other cubes.
True.
A lot of cool things going on in medieval Germany. Like it, Wallenstein.
Neat game. Shortlisted for me. I just don't like the game as much, and so it just didn't. Other games pushed it out of the list.
And finally, number 1.
Finally for me is the newbie on the list, and that's Orléans. Really like this one, where you're building characters into a bag and pulling them out and adding more in as you sort of adjust the bag to do what you're trying to do. And these actions are helping you build farms and get monasteries and monks and that sort of thing. Very fun game, one that I still haven't quite mastered, but a really great example of the theme, and that's Orléans.
Yeah, that's another one I really considered putting on the list. I really love Orleans. I don't know. My number 1, though, was an easy pick for me because it's so thematically strong, and that's Warrior Knights. Warrior Knights is a game that is really kind of like Twilight Imperium, but in the medieval era. Really enjoy this game. You're moving these knights around and trying to go and conquer other people's lands and things, but there's politics. Once you add the expansion, there's a little bit of technology thrown in. There's religion, and it's this very, not Game of Thrones-ish, but close to that feeling, but with a pretty historical flavor to it. There's a lot in this game. It's a pretty lengthy game, like 3 or 4 hours long, but still one of the best of this era that I've ever played. It's been a while since I played this one, but it just always comes to my mind first on this kind of list, so that's Warrior Knights.
Cool.
All right, let's see what the contributors think.
This is Anthony from Board Gamers Anonymous, and to me, the best medieval-era board game has to be Castles of Burgundy. This is one of those near-perfect games. It feels different almost every time, and whether you think it has enough theme or not, it really does have a lot of elements of medieval France in there. This is one of Stefan Feld's best games, and at any point in time, I'm happy to play this one, offline or online. And that's my favorite medieval game, The Castles of Burgundy.
Hey everybody, it's the Board Game Point of View. And our favorite medieval-era game is Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
Medieval time period is almost defined by castles, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It is so iconic of the period
that
having a game called Castles about building castles, it seems almost like just the perfect medieval game to me.
Right? We need the Siege the Castles of Mad King Ludwig expansion. That's what I want to see.
Rob Davio, he can do it.
Castles of Mad King Ludwig legacy game.
I like the 5th playthrough, you marry your cousin.
What?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hi, this is Flip from Flip the Table. And as far as best medieval game, I kind of disqualified fantasy-based games, even though you could make the argument that they are medieval. But as far as my favorite medieval game, I'd say it's Troyes, or Troy as I call it in my house, because I'm an American and that's what we do. Anyway, I love Troyes because it's got dice, it's very Euro-y, you can mitigate the dice like anything. It's just all around a great game. My pick, Troyes.
I'm Eric Dewey from On Board Games.
Eric, what's your favorite medieval game?
I have to go with Masquerade. I'm very impressed with how the hidden roles and how you can claim to be something you're not, and everyone knows you're not, but no one's willing to call you on it. And I really like sort of the intrigue and medieval court politics that happens there.
My favorite is Lowenhertz, which was remade like as Domain later, and that's the wrong version to get, and if you think otherwise, you are wrong. In Lowenhertz, the king's about to die, and you are trying to grab up as much land as possible before the king dies. There's this mechanism where a certain amount of things are going to be available on the turn. People are going to pick which ones they want, and there's going to be conflict every time where you are either letting the other person have it and making them pay you for the privilege, or you are paying money to get that thing. And so there's always this tug of war, of are you trying to get the more money, or are you actually trying to get the thing? Then you can push your knights and stuff, your walls around to try and gain bigger territories. And it's my favorite one. It's mean. It is not a nice game, which is probably why not anyone else is going to pick it.
Well, I'm Eric Dewey.
And I'm Donald Dennis.
From On Board Games.
It's Roy Caney from Epic Gaming Night. For me, it's Shadows over Camelot. Knights going on quests, fighting off Picts and Saxons, trying to find the Holy Grail. King Arthur and Merlin are real, right, guys? Right?
Jonathan from the Snakes Cast. I don't actually play a lot of medieval-themed games, but one of my co-hosts on the Snakes Cast, David Kingsmill, plays a lot of them, and he's a huge fan of Pillars of the Earth, a 10-year-old worker placement game that still holds up really well today. Questions of which resource to take, how many workers to commit where, and when to spend money for an advantage provide for really interesting decisions in a game with quite simple rules. That makes it really good for couples and a fine cafe game. Plus, there's that really cool wooden cathedral, which you use to see how many turns are left to go.
This is Brian from Cult of the Old. My first thoughts were Blue Moon City and even Kingsburg, but those are more generic fantasy than medieval. So I'm going to go straight up with Medieval Academy. It's essentially a drafting game, but it's very accessible, very fun. There's enough meat to it to keep it going, even though it's a lighter game. And the variants where you can flip the cards over on the other side to do some different stuff is fun.
This is Professor Scott Rogers of Biography of a Board Game. And what do I think is the best medieval-themed board game? Well, I'd have to give that to Lakeside's 1983 title, Crossbows and Catapults. Now, I know there were other games that were similar, like Weapons and Warriors, but I think that there's something about launching those little pucks with those arbalists and catapults were just really fun, and I really love the sculpts of the Vikings and the barbarian figures. So that's my vote, Crossbows and Catapults.
Hi guys, Luke from the Broken Meeple, and Pillars of the Earth is the obvious choice for me here, mostly because of that board. It is the most beautiful board I've ever seen in any game ever, capturing the medieval theme in such glorious detail with all the little Easter eggs all over the place of everyone working together and building that cathedral. And on top of that, you get to build the cathedral itself out of cool pieces. What better one is there to choose than Pillars of the Earth?
Good assortment, although I had considered Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Ludwig was not part of the medieval period.
I think it's...
He was like late 19th, early 20th century, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm seeing that... I looked up Wallenstein, and he was actually in the 1500s, the early 1600s.
Oh, that's just over the line.
It is.
I'll allow it.
You'll allow it? You're so kind, sir.
Yes.
You're so kind. Actually, had I thought about crossbows and catapults, I would have stuck that one in, because that's so awesome.
I'd considered that one as well.
All right, let's see what the people say. Number 10, they said Marco Polo. Number 9, Medieval Academy. Is that because the word...
Yeah, I thought that was going to make your list.
Well, I really like it, but... First of all, again, it's very fantastical. It should be called Fantasy Academy. There's a dragon in it. There's a guy with magic and stuff.
All right.
8 is Kalis. 7 is Village.
Mm-hmm.
Village is a good choice if you like that game. 6, Sheriff of Nottingham. 5, Orleans. 4, Dominion. 3, Pandemic. Just kidding, but I do think the People's Choice tends to shoehorn Pandemic in most lists.
Well, isn't there... No, that it's not quite medieval. It's what's the time period that the new one's going to be?
I forget it. I don't know, but I'll tell you this.
Pandemic Iberia.
I'll tell you this. If there's not a medieval pandemic, there will be. I'm calling it now.
Plague-demic.
Anyway, number 3 is actually Castles of Burgundy, like Eric said. Number 2, Shadows over Camelot. And number 1, Carcassonne. Now, this is usually the point in the episode where we would be finishing. But this is a special squish episode, which means we're sticking...
Extendo episode.
We're sticking in extra stuff. And to prove it, here's Jeff.
3, 2, 1,
go. It's time for GameTek with Jeff Engelstein, where we find out how games really work.
Kansas City sits across 2 states, Kansas and Missouri. They are, not surprisingly, competitive about a lot of things, but over the last decade, that erupted into open warfare, economic warfare. Now, many states in the U.S., probably all of them, offer incentives for businesses to move there. Lower taxes, subsidized utility rates, and more are all on the table. When I go to trade shows, I often see booths representing Virginia or Michigan or Mississippi and many others, all trying to talk business owners to convince them to relocate. Now, for most businesses, relocating to a new state to take advantage of these incentives comes at a cost. Employees don't want to move, so there is turnover or a big expense to help them move. And just the costs of moving across the country and the resulting disruption to your business can add up. So companies do shop around, but there's a barrier. That means that the incentives often need to be really good to be considered. So back to Kansas City. There the situation was totally different. When Kansas and Missouri started offering deals for companies to move into their state, savvy businesses located in Kansas City realized that they basically could move literally a few blocks away and save a ton of money. Yes, they still had to move, but the employees would all stay, and the move would be as simple as they can be. So lots of companies started taking advantage, and Kansas and Missouri felt they needed to compete to grab them or keep them and kept increasing the tax incentives, costing taxpayers of the state money. And the premise behind the programs, that they would bring jobs to their states, was basically not true. Employees weren't relocating to their new state. They weren't really creating any jobs. They were just moving the deck chairs around. Now, this is a classic real-world example of the prisoner's dilemma. For those who aren't familiar, the prisoner's dilemma gives two people a choice: cooperate or defect. If both cooperate, the outcome is pretty good for both. If one cooperates but the other defects, it's great for the defector but lousy for the cooperator. And if both defect, it's bad for both. Here, cooperating would mean not offering tax incentives to companies moving just a few blocks away. But if one state doesn't offer incentives and the other does, defecting in essence, it will really hurt the cooperator. So in one sense, you can say that this is market forces at work. The price states are willing to pay for a business to relocate will go up until it just doesn't make sense anymore. But the problem in this case is that there are no new net jobs created in a very small area, but both states are losing a tremendous amount of revenue. Businesses were just moving up and back, and companies like Applebee's actually changed like 2 or 3 times during this period. I'm sure there are many out there who feel that taxes should be as low as they can be, and that this is a great outcome. But from the state's perspective, after 10 years of this border war, the same number of jobs moved from Kansas to Missouri as moved from Missouri back to Kansas. The net job gain by each state was basically 0. And finally, in 2014, the Missouri state legislature passed a law that said they would stop offering incentives to get companies to move across the border, saving $20 million. But they would only stop it if Kansas agreed they would stop as well. But Kansas did not, and so the border wars raged. At least until a few weeks ago. In April, Kansas Governor Sam Brownback said that Kansas would start to curtail its incentive program. If Kansas goes through with that, the Missouri law would kick in and both states would move from being defectors to cooperators. Now, the prisoner's dilemma rears its head in all kinds of unlikely real-world spots, and it requires a coordinated effort on all the parties to move from defecting to cooperating, especially if there's already a pattern of defecting. Campaign finance reform here in the U.S. is in a similar situation. Candidates all come out against the current system but still take part in it. Now, even if you believe that they're being sincere, defecting and taking big money donations may still be the right move if everyone else is defecting. Cooperating and limiting yourself to small donations may work for some candidates, but others cannot afford unilateral disarmament. So, keep your eyes out for the prisoner's dilemma. It pops up in some pretty unexpected places. This is Jeff Engelstein with GameTek.
And now here's Ken to talk about Dudes on a Board.
Hello, once again, Ken here with Dudes on a Board. Now I'm going to talk about a way to make your Risk-playing experience what it really should be. Number one complaint about Risk, other than it's simply just a bunch of luck and dice chucking by some interpretations, is that it can go on. It can be endless. It can not stop. And that is true if you are, let's take the very original version of Risk. If you are playing it as it's written, the number one thing that causes that game to become a stalemate is if you do the turn-ins the way you're supposed to. The progressive turn-in system. With the game of Risk, you collect territory cards should you conquer at least one territory during your turn. That card has a symbol of either a cavalry, artillery, or an infantry unit. Some versions also have wild cards in there as well. You turn in either a set of 3 or one of each. In your hand, at the beginning of your turn, you get additional units. Now, the first turn in, they're going to get 4, then it goes 6, then 8, then 10, then it starts going up by 5. So as you continue playing the game, if you just stay in it long enough, and you have to turn in when you get 5 cards, you cannot hold more than that. Eventually you're getting into the 20, 30s, 40s, and it goes up to, I believe, 60. That is what causes Risk to go on. Point blank. Now, other versions of Risk have come out where they play out during a certain number of turns. Risk 2210 AD, Risk Godstorm, Risk Napoleon. Some of these games I've done little bits about as well, but these are games that are not supposed to take a domination standpoint. You are supposed to end the game after so many turns and score points. Now with those versions, because you can only have so many potential turns, they do not use the progressive counting system. They do it to where 3 infantry will equal 4 units, 3 cavalry will equal 6, 3 artillery 8, 1 of each will equal 10. So the true way to play Risk, in my opinion at least, to where it is all about the actual skill of the player, the tactics that they make, the territories they choose to control, and it is not determined by just being able to hang on long enough to have that 60 unit turn-in, is to play from beginning to end, total domination style. Don't stop at a certain number, but use that turn-in method, and it can be used on any Risk game. So from the very beginning, if your first 3 cards are an infantry, a cavalry, and an artillery, boom, you get 10 turn-in. That is it. Some other games in the Risk line have moved to sort of a symbol count. They may be stars or skulls or what have you, where your territory card will have 1, 2, sometimes 3 symbols at the bottom of it, and you simply collect them and use them as a turn-in. So, 8 stars equals 10 extra units, or, 15 stars equals it, however the breakdown is. Now on those games, cap it at 10. Once again, you cannot turn in for more than those 10 units. Should you do that, no matter which Risk variant you play, that should fix your problem, and that should make it about the individual player, not the luck of the cards and the ridiculous onslaught of units. Hopefully this helped. Try it out. Let's see what happens. This is Ken, wrapping it up with Dudes on a Board.
Is this the issue? I mean, he's talking about the problem of Risk being the escalation of turning in more and more cards that are worth more and more guys. And I always thought that was what eventually ends it, while somebody finally gets enough guys to just roll over everybody else. But do you agree with this? The maximum new troops you can get is 10 when you turn in cards?
I honestly don't think Risk can be fixed at this point, really, other than maybe Risk Legacy. I would just go play another game. I think that whole getting troops with cards thing, it worked well, but Risk is an outdated game. It's not one I'm really interested in playing these days, so I don't care.
It's not worth fixing, just move on. All right.
Right, I really don't. I never liked when someone would turn in a whole pile of cards for a bunch of armies, but if they put this limit on it, then I don't really see the point of playing that much, honestly.
But the real question is, if I were to attack you in Risk, would you take it personally?
Well, yes.
It's time for the Dice Tower's Question of the Week, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., in which our team of gaming experts answers one of your questions, thus increasing the odds that someone will get it right. This week's question: how do you deal with a player who takes an in-game attack personally?
Hello, Luke from the Broken Meeple, and I don't have a lot of patience for these sorts of players. If you're in a game and you're getting attacked, stop taking it that seriously. I mean, okay, if they're ganging up on you from the minute you start and there's no real reason why, then yeah, I can understand that getting a bit irritating. But most of the time, it is just a game at the end of the day. With these sorts of players, most of the time you won't be able to talk them out of it. They're going to be after your blood for the rest of the game and possibly moan on about the fact that they've been attacked by you and they feel it's a personal thing. But then I suppose the worst case scenario is that you survive that one game and then you don't have to play the game with them ever again. Or certainly not a competitive one anyway. You could just march on to co-ops, I guess. But yeah, there's not a lot you can do with these guys.
Jonathan from the Snakes Cast. Some people have real trouble separating their in-game avatar from their out-of-game persona. Person like that can pretty much be guaranteed to take it personally when you attack them in a game. Even if they understand that it is just a game and they understand the difference between real life and a game, it still hurts them when they're attacked. They still take it personally, and it's not something they can really help. You can try to convince them that it's just a game and therefore it's not the same, but in my experience, that never works. So really, the best thing to do is to say you're sorry, even if you're not. Try to be as sincere as you can, and don't play that sort of game with them. Games that have a lot of hate and acrimony are simply not a good choice for players with that sort of temperament.
This is Professor Scott Rogers of Biography of a Board Game. And what do I do if I attack somebody in a game and they take it personally? Well, I try to remind everybody that we're all there for fun, and hopefully they understand that that's just part of the game, and maybe that they'll get an opportunity to get a little revenge and attack me if they get a chance. As long as you remind everybody that you're just there to have a good time, then hopefully things will smooth over.
This is Roy Caney from Epic Gaming Night, and first I would have to make sure that they're not acting to take it personally to try to get out of being attacked, which means they should be attacked even more. But if that's not the case and they actually are getting upset about the confrontation and the attacking in the game, I would just let them know that this is what my objective says, this is what I'm trying to do, or you're in the lead and you're the person we need to take down, and just let them know how the game is played, and if they still don't understand, maybe confrontation games aren't for them.
I'm Eric Dewey.
And I'm Donald Dennis.
From Onboard Games. And for me, the true answer is I won't play with them again because it's just a game.
Right.
I will try and explain it's just a game and point out that when the game starts over again, we're all back to the same position.
Because what is good in life, it is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their meeples. So I agree. What you want to do is, if they're being ridiculous about it, then you sort of bring that attention to them. If they're kids and they can't get past it, then you let them attack you and they feel much better about it. But by and large, you try and avoid the childish behaving people if they're not actually children.
Exactly.
Hey there, this is Chris with Flip the Table, and I suspect there'll be a lot of discussion today about either picking games with less attacking and less conflict, or confronting the person about their behavior, both of which are very valid strategies. But something that's important to remember as well is that even good gamers have bad days, and sometimes things happening outside of the game may be affecting that person in a way that's causing them to behave in a way they normally wouldn't. So just remember that a little empathy goes a long way. Unless you're Jared, who is the actual worst.
Hey, it's Christina from Blue Peg, Pink Peg. So I just attacked someone, and they responded with extreme anger towards that. So I would lean in, look at them in the eye, and let them smack me in the face. Just kidding. How I would respond would be to recognize that their anger is not about the board game and it's not about what I just did. There might be underlying things going on. So I would diffuse it with humor during the gameplay, and then maybe after the game is over, check in with them to see how they're feeling. Because attacking happens in games, and the chances are there's something else going on.
I like those last two answers, where it could very well be something outside the game that's bothering this person, and that's where you should deal with it. I think you just need to power through the game, finish the game, and then bring it up outside the gaming table when tempers maybe are a little lower, and figure out what's really going on. Maybe there's a significant mismatch in the games that this person wants to play, or maybe there's something going on outside the game group that you need to address, or just let this person work through. Although I can certainly understand maybe some people just can't handle that sort of confrontation, and they shouldn't be playing these sorts of games in the first place.
I agree with all that. All that's good, fine, etc., etc., etc. There is another possibility no one brought up, and it's possible that your attack is personal.
Huh?
Even if it's unintentional. And a couple examples there. I always say that nice guys finish last in games where you can attack different people. Because the person who's super nice gets attacked more easily because you sit there and go, yeah, I know that he won't get that upset over this, so he's easier to attack.
It's true.
Or at the same time, sometimes someone will irritate you to the point where you're like, I'm attacking them. Why? Because of whatever. Or you're metagaming, pulling something from another game. And you say, I'm not really doing that. But it is possible that you are. And so I would say, consider, are you actually doing this? Maybe. Other than that I would also, are they using the tactic of just getting mad so that you don't attack them? Don't let them hold you hostage with their anger. You know? And then I would just talk to them outside, really, and say, look, this really bothers me. If this keeps up, I can't play these sorts of games with you. And that's not an easy talk to have at all. I've done it, I think, 3 times in my life. I do not enjoy doing this particular talk because it's not one that's going to make them feel good. But like man, you get angry. And I'm saying man here because for me in this situation, it has always been a male person who gets really angry. My wife just punches my arm and then attacks me back.
I mean, I have seen people get emotional on this too, not necessarily angry, but just like mopey and upset that they've been attacked. Although I like Roy's suggestion that maybe that's just all part of the ploy. If I act upset, maybe they'll leave me alone.
And sometimes it's not even just a ploy; it's just how people deal with life.
Yeah.
Hey, if I throw a tantrum to some degree, I get my way. Well, if you reward that, well, then you're going to have to deal with it all the time.
You got to teach them.
And it's especially frustrating when someone complains really loudly about being attacked. You then kind of pull back from attacking them, and then they make a huge deal about winning. That's when you want to pop them upside the head.
Yes.
So I say don't give them that. I mean, fool you once, shame on you. Fool you twice, no.
Right.
So, well, it's time to go to Origins. Are you ready?
No.
Are your bags packed?
Not yet, but they should be.
All right. Well, folks, we'll see you this week at Origins if you're in Columbus, and if not, we will be talking to you in a week. Our next show will be recorded live at Origins. Hopefully, some of you will be there to see that. Remember, 9:00 Saturday night.
Bring a generic ticket.
And you know what you should not bring? Silly string.
Yes, please don't.
Just saying. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 462, was recorded on June 9th, 2016. Coming up next week, it's our Origins live show with a full panel of special guests. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has turned your game upside down, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with assistance from Jason Thompson, Itai Perez, Eric Matthews, and Rob Searing. Our entryway remains sealed thanks to Shodor. Timothy Fakeham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at Dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including Boards and Swords, Start Space, The Long View, The Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast, and Board Game University. Find out more at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So, how are we going to keep people from walking through the set at the Origins preview this year? Because someone always does it. You were just trying to film something, and some Yahoo just wanders around like, what's going on? Oh, what are you doing?
There is booby traps, all right? Bad things will happen. If you walk in front of a camera, there's a possibility of a landmine.
Landmines.
Every year. No, but they're like pleasant landmines. They'll just envelope you in a pile of bubble wrap.
Yeah.
And store you in a box until you learn your lesson.
There you go. We could just wrap the entire booth in bubble wrap.
Ooh.